AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need. It's all birds, all the time.
And welcome to another edition of AATBirds Weekly Report. We're back. NFL draft, talking defense, linebackers, defensive backs. We need to get those fits in just because it's a staple point of what the Eagles most likely will look for in the draft. You know, we talked defensive. The defensive prospects were going to be the biggest one. When you and I, Matt, were talking, and again, joined by Matt Templin. Chip is not going to join us tonight. He'll be back with me next week as Matt takes his sabbatical here, having another child, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be busy on your own there. You'll be back for our mock draft, which is always a fun show in 2 weeks. So, but I wanted to get this show in here, talking linebackers and defensive backs. We had last week, we kind of split it up just because of with the owners' meetings. There was stuff to talk about. I wanted to get that in. And then so we talked about the defensive line, edge rushers, and defensive tackles. So we highlighted those last week. Now this week it's linebackers and defensive backs. And I want to start it off here talking. Now, you know, linebacker, we know of the situation with Nakobe Dean. We know the injury, whether or not when he's going to come back. That's, of course, for time to tell here. Rehab, everything that has to go along with that. So we don't know exactly when he's coming back. You know, Zach Bond extended, so that was always a good thing to see him get the extension for how well he played last year and the way he took over that role. And, you know, you lose Oren Burks. You know, you just – Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is there. Ben Van Sumeren has been listed as a fullback. So –
they're back, baby. Fullback is back.
Which is okay. But linebacker is a position of need, and we know the defensive back is a position of need because of who you lost in the secondary. And you lost Darius Slay, you lost Isaiah Rodgers, you lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So you need to replenish these rooms here, and the Eagles will have the capabilities to do that. So we're going to start off with linebacker. I'm going to let you go first and, you know, give one of your favorite linebackers, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and, you know, shoot out some names here and kind of, you know, get this ball rolling.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I want to do when we go into these prospects is talk a little bit about what I think they're looking for, just based on some of the trends we've seen in the last couple of years, specifically under Fangio. So when you look at the prototype that we have in that room, minus Dean and Trotter, who I think you could argue that they're a type they're looking for. I would argue that they're probably the exception. Mm-hmm. I think they're looking for more length there. I think that's what Fangio likes. I think he likes that 6'2", 235 range, somewhere around there. You know, look at Bond. Oren Burks was arguably our biggest linebacker last year. Great arm span. He's I think they're going to be looking for a bigger guy to play next to Bond, maybe someone that's a little bit more interchangeable with that skill set. They do a lot of walking down into a 5-man front with Bond specifically. If I'm Vic Fangio, I'd be looking for someone that has those same types of traits, right? They have the length, they have the athleticism, they have the speed. They also have the chops to come down and play the run, set the edge. So there's two players in particular that I'm really interested in that mold. One is going to be probably a top 2 round, maybe slips into round 3. And that's Demetrius Knight from South Carolina. Really, really like him. I'm actually surprised he's not getting first round hype, to be honest with you. He's got a similar skill set to Bond. He's 6'2", 235. Pretty good RAS score, 8.21, ran a 4.5 40. He's got speed. He's got that sideline to sideline speed that I think he's looking for. And by he, I mean Fangio. He bounced around a little bit Georgia Tech for 2 or 3 years, and then Charlotte, and then finished at SC. Last year, he had 82 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, an interception, 3 forced fumbles. He's always around the ball. He's always looking to punch it out. And one thing that I'm looking for in a linebacker is someone who finishes through the ball carrier. No more of this. These lighter guys that kind of catch the ball carrier and fall backwards and just hope tripped over your body, right? So Demetrius Knight is a guy that I'm really interested in. Grades out really high in the pass rush, around a 79 there at a pass rush, 85.4 in run defense, and surprisingly good in coverage for someone his size, graded out around a 75 for PFF. So he's a guy that's really, really interesting to me. And I think probably top 2 linebacker in the draft, probably behind Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, and a player that I want to throw out here, you mentioned Jihad Campbell. He's the number 1 guy inside linebacker. I don't believe he's going to be there when the Eagles pick at 32. I think he's going to be gone
take him anyway. Yeah.
So it's just my thought. But a guy that I really like from Oklahoma, Danny Stutzman. He's 6'3", 233. He plays like his instincts and his recognition, like show his impressive skill set. And I think he's got some, issues in terms of, when the offensive linemen get to the second level and stuff like that, but he can rush the passer. So he gives you that excitement. Like the way I look at it is like Nakobe Dean has a lot of, like if Nakobe Dean was 6'2", 235 pounds,
he'd be an all-pro.
He would be an all-pro.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that Stutzman is an all-pro. I'm just saying his size and what he can give you. I think if you could get him in the mid rounds, whether it's 3rd, 4th area, I think it'd be a hell of a prospect to be able to get that late. The one thing that I really
tested really well too.
Yeah, and I think he also gives you tremendous special teams skill set as well, which to me, if you're drafting a linebacker that may not play or may have to play some, he has to play special teams. And, we saw last year when they signed Devin White and he was not going to be the starter, he didn't play special teams. So then he was inactive. Like playing special teams is huge for these last, spots of the roster. You want to be able to get in games, because if you can get in games on special teams and somebody gets hurt, your opportunity to go in there really shines. Like look at some players the Eagles have had. Look at some linebackers now. When we look at Eagles linebackers over the years, unfortunately, they're always of the bargain bin variety, like the Camus Grugier Hills, and who's still in the league, has held up, had a good career, but you look at a Nate Gary, like Duke Riley, like special teams is a key role to get stuff. If you take a look at one of the Eagles' best special teamers they've ever had, Ike Reese, he played
I thought you were going to say Keith Adams.
Sorry, Keith Adams was there too. I know. But Ike Reese was a special teams guy, big-time special teams player. But he was able to get in there when there were injuries and play a key role on the Eagles' defense in certain situations and in the playoffs and stuff like that. And that's what is huge and monumental, because, look, Oren Burks had a huge play in the wild card game against the Packers. And in that game, Nakobe Dean gets hurt and Oren Burks has to step in and play. And he has to step in for the rest of the postseason, and had a really good postseason. And he relayed that into a contract with the Cincinnati Bengals and a potential start, because if you look at them, Jermaine Pratt wanted to trade. So there's opportunity there potentially for him to get a lot more snaps and a lot more playing time in Cincinnati. So this is where I look at a player of like a Stutzman, Teddy Buchanan, I know, is one that you really like.
We'll get into him in a second. Yeah.
I'll let you get to him. But like guys, like just running down the list a little bit, I like Karchen Schweitzinger from UCLA. Jay Higgins, I really like from Iowa. Those are kind of my guys. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Teddy Buchanan, and you mentioned Demetrius Knight. But those are some of the guys I'm looking at when I take a look. Now, I know in my mock that I just had released, I had Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon late. He was one of the second to last fifth round pick. I had the Eagles picking. But just where everything lied, he was the best linebacker that was available at that point. But like looking at those guys, the Jay Higgins, the Teddy Buchanans, I'll even throw Jeffrey Bassa, Danny Stutzman, Demetrius Knight, Schweitzinger.
Yeah.
Like there's talent that they can get some quality players, in the mid rounds when you look at the linebacker position.
Yeah, I agree. I think we were talking before we jumped on here. There's a lot of depth in this draft, and I think one of those positions is at linebacker, and it really depends on the flavor that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Stutzman's super interesting to me because he flashes on tape. You go to watch folks, and he flashes on tape. Also neck roll. So
can't discount the neck roll.
Yeah. So that once again bumps him up a whole round. So if you think he's a fifth rounder, he's a fourth rounder. He definitely flashes. Certainly more in the run game, probably because he's at Oklahoma. Not asked to do a lot in coverage, I don't think. But he has the athleticism. He has the traits to do it. His athletic testing was off the charts for someone his size. So again, he's 6'3", 233. He had a 9.53 RAS score. He ran a 4.5. Graded out a little bit better in 23 than he did in 24. But he's awesome against the run. He's 90.1 grade by PFF. 109 tackles, 8 for a loss, a sack. In total, he has 376 tackles, 37 for a loss, 8 sacks, 3 interceptions, 8 pass defense. So, he can play. He's got the chops. He's got the athleticism. It's just a matter of whether or not you can get him into a scheme with a guy like Fangio, who I think could kind of unlock that potential. Who he reminds me a little bit of? There's 2 guys that these are probably lazy comps because he's white, but LVE, Van Der Esch, and Stuart Bradley.
Okay.
He's similar body type, similar type of play with kind of unlocked athleticism. So I like Stutzman. I like him a lot. But jumping into someone that you mentioned, Teddy Buchanan, I think, is my favorite linebacker in the draft. I don't know why he plays with a tenacity that I think would be much welcome in this city.
Is it because you see some he's from Cal, like Michael Kendricks?
Well, he's like
his brother. His brother has the hair. He didn't have the hair.
He's got an interesting body type. He doesn't look like he's as big as he is. He's 6'2", 235. But he's got that wingspan. He's got that length that I think they're looking for. But he's got ridiculous athleticism. He's 9.57 RAS score. He grades out even higher than Stutzman. Had 114 tackles last year, 12 for a loss, 4 pass defense, 2 forced fumbles, and 5 sacks. So he's got that pass rush prowess that Fangio is looking for potentially to make Bond. I think they're looking for someone to make Bond a little less obvious in their defense. I think they want to be able to interchange that and perform some of these sim blitzes, right? He was really good in coverage, Teddy. 76.2 in 2024. He can rush the passer. He's getting graded out pretty well there. His explosion grade and speed grade from a relative athletic score perspective, off the charts. Graded out elite there. He's just a really fun player to watch, and I think he'd be a really good fit for a Fangio defense.
Yeah, and a guy that I had mentioned too, Jay Higgins. Now, he didn't test very well, 4.82, 40. And again, testing goes a long way, but it's not the whole thing. You look at his production; he's a monster at Iowa, the tackling machine, team captain, instant reaction time to post snap movement. The recognition was great on his end. Now the issue here is, does he have the speed? You see the recognition. Are you able to attack it? How do you play? Like, you can run, but like some players, they test, 4.4 speed, but they really have like 4.6 speed on the field. Like,
Right.
that's what I really want to see. Now, to me, I think he's more 5th, 6th, 7th round range with that testing. I think he's probably the high point is probably the mid 5th round, maybe 6th round pick. Potentially he could wind up falling out of the draft and being
I was going
undrafted.
to say, maybe he turns into kind of your TJ Edwards, where
because he only 6 foot 224. He's not overly huge. He has that same Nakobe Dean size. The one guy I do like, and again, I think he's also another player that may fit into the not being drafted, would be Maryland linebacker Ruben Hippolyte. Now, he's got the size. It's just the production's not there.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. He came into, Maryland super hyped up, but just wasn't able to show really anything. But again, these are guys at the end, even like a Carson Bruner, like these are guys that undrafted that I was looking at. But, Kobe King, I think to me is just a run stuffing linebacker. He's an old school type of linebacker. If you were looking like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, 6'1", 248, almost 250 pounds.
He runs pretty well for his size, though. I mean, I will say.
Yeah. And again, he'll start probably on special teams, a player like that could, maneuver his role. But like, I like this class. I think there's a lot of value. If you wait too long, that may hurt you. That's why I'm thinking like the Eagles, if you want to get a linebacker into that 4th round, I think that's where is like you can get a high quality prospect for where you're picking. When you start dropping lower than that, it may be best to just get an undrafted guy at that point and maybe sign a veteran, whether it be a Kaiser White or whoever it may be after the draft, to make sure that position is still depth there. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how they attack the linebacker position.
Yeah, I think they want to add like 2 or 3 bodies there. If I were them, I'd probably go try to get someone in the draft. Again, in that 4 to undrafted space, probably 2 of those, like 1 in the draft, 1 post draft, and then maybe another journeyman vet to jump in there. Another 2 guys that I'm interested in are Cody Simon out of Ohio State.
Yeah, Cody Simon.
His athleticism and production really interests me. Younger guy too. And then Jamon Dumas Johnson, Kentucky. Sneaky pick here because he's a former UGA guy. Right, he's a former Georgia guy, so I know how he scouted him. 3 years there, and then 1 in Kentucky. Again, these guys are around that 6'1", 6'2" spot, around 230, 238, somewhere within there. Ridiculous athleticism. We know that's something that Howie is pretty keen on in his players. So another 2 names to look at, potentially mid to late rounds. I actually see Dumas Johnson mocked to us quite a bit in the 5th.
I'm okay with that.
Rounds. He's interesting. He's not going to blow me away as a draft pick, but I think he'd be a solid value there later rounds.
So I want to transition over here to the cornerback position because I think there is a probability the Eagles, if they're still at 32 and one of the top corners, if there's a top corner on the board, don't be surprised if they take another corner because Cooper DeJean, to me, is staying in that slot role, that nickel role, because that's what Fangio wants. He wants him in the slot because of listen, you have 3 starting corners in the NFL these days. It's not just 2 corners on the outside and then you bring in a slot corner on third down. Like the way the NFL is run here, you have 3 corners because you only play with 2 linebackers. So,
well, and we talked about that in a show a couple of weeks ago, that Fangio looks at his slot as an extension of the linebacker core, right? And that's what he looks at in a guy like DeJean. And you and I both, and Chip, all said that you got to keep him at that slot position. And that's exactly what Fangio came out and said this week.
Yeah, and I'm totally happy with that. Yeah. But when you look at the corners, I want your thoughts on a player here. Now, I know he's coming off of an injury. Now, if he didn't get an injury, I think he would have been probably a mid-first round pick, maybe late teens.
My man Ben?
No. He was another one I thought about, but
yeah,
Javon Revell Jr. from East Carolina.
Yeah.
I really, really like him. The injury thing is what, how far does he fall? Do you take someone like, but the way that I see it is like, we're looking at, you're not asking the kid to come in and be Quinion, or Cooper. Like, you're looking for him to be a solid player. And whether that is, he winds up being healthy and playing and stuff, but I don't think that should deter them. If he's available at 32, I would love for them to pick him. I think it would be
you essentially get a redshirt year there as well. Yeah. When did he tear that ACL? That was beginning of the year, right? 3 games, 2 games?
I thought it was like 2 or 3 games in.
Yeah.
He played.
Yeah, he played 2 games, I think, and a little bit of a third.
Yeah. So it was early in September.
Yeah. So he's interesting to me. I'm sure there are people listening that are having Sidney Jones PTSD here, but I think an ACL injury is a lot different than how we used to view it. It's not the death penalty that it used to be. I think a lot of guys are coming back from that quicker and quicker every year. So that doesn't concern me as much as it normally would.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that it's probably more concerning for a corner than it would be any other position because of all of the lateral movement that you have to do, especially in the NFL. I think 32 would be a little too rich for my blood. I do find it interesting that they are having top visits with some of these
Maxwell Harris.
Hairston and Amos in the last 2 weeks. They brought in Parrish as well from Kansas State, or Kansas. Not Kansas State, right?
Kansas State.
Yeah. So I do think that's interesting. They're doing their homework. My question to you is, do you think that's we're picking at 32 and they may be available, or do you think that's if we have to trade back in the beginning of the second round and these guys are hanging around, that's where we pounce? So
if you look at the Eagles, they get to 32 and you have 2 or 3 of these guys still on the board. Wouldn't surprise me if they traded down, 5 to 7 picks.
Yeah.
And maybe take one then and acquire some picks, whether it's a pick next year, another pick later in the draft. But I definitely could see that as a possibility.
Yeah.
You take a look at the talent at corner, kind of where they're going to be picking. Like, I'm not going to talk about the top guys because they're not going to be available. Right. So like you stated, Trey Amos, they had visit Maxwell Hairston. You have Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, Za Frazier from UTSA. There's some other guys on here. Thomas from Florida State, Noah Williams from California. So there's some, Kobe Bryant from Kansas, which you got a lot of hate when you had put him in your mock.
Crazy.
Which was kind of hilarious.
5th round pick.
Exactly.
Pick 168. Relax, guys. If you're listening, chill. It's a mock draft.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The one thing that I've noticed too in this this group of corners, there's a lot of size.
And
You really
speed.
look
Some fast dudes with good size. I mean, Ben Morrison ran a 4.39. Mac McWilliams ran a 4.4. Wally's at the 4.4. Dorian Strong was 4.5. Kobe was a 4.5. Porter ran a 4.3. Parrish was a 4.35. Amos was a 4.4. And Hairston was like a 4.28, I think. So you got some ridiculous speed, and these aren't little guys either. They're 6 foot and above.
No, you got some really good speed. Another guy, a guy that I mocked, Upton Stout from Western Kentucky. Smaller.
Now, do you see him as a corner or safety?
See, and that's the thing too, is like some of these guys, you could potentially have him at safety. And again, I had him later in the draft, but like. I don't know. I just think the Eagles will draft a corner and a safety just because they want to keep the depth at the position. Like, you have Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, but again, you just never know. An injury or 1 to 2 injuries in your cornerback group or your secondary, you could be razor thin and having to, have guys like Michael Jacquet playing for you and starting. So, the opportunity there to have some young players, and they did sign Adoree Jackson as well. But you want to make sure that your secondary has some depth, because we see it every year with teams around the NFL. Is secondary is such a position where if you get 1 or 2 injuries or even a couple injuries there, it could really damage your season, because if you don't have the proper players playing in the secondary, it's going to make the rest of the defense struggle, because they're going to be trying to either rush the passer to help the secondary and vice versa. The Eagles didn't have that issue last year. Yeah. So, for me, I know the Eagles had some scouts and everything at the Rutgers day. Robert Longerbeam is one of the corners for Rutgers. But again, like, there's some talent there in the cornerback position. And I definitely expect, don't be surprised if the Eagles don't take 2 corners.
I was just going to say, I wouldn't be shocked if they draft a boundary
and a nickel
fairly early, but I think that backup nickel should be or will be something of emphasis. I wonder if that nickel would be someone like a Stout, or if that would be someone like Andrew Makuba or a Malachi Starks, someone that has that positional versatility similar to GJ, that can come in and play either safety or that nickel spot.
Yeah. So I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how they, go about that and what they do. It's going to be interesting to see how that all lines up and all that fits. Like, the biggest position to me, especially after the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade, is the safety position. Yep. And, we look at the safety position here and who's available. I know everybody wants to gawk at South Carolina's Nick, was it Amin-Wari, right?
Amin-Wari, yeah.
Yeah, because of his size and what he ran and everything like that. But when I look at the safety positions, the guys I'm looking at, Malachi Starks, we know. Andrew Makuba, we've talked about him. And Mel Kiper Jr. had him in the second round of his draft, his latest mock draft, and that's Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State. He got hurt in the second game of the season this year. I absolutely love the way he plays. I think he is. If you can get him in the second round, late in the second round, to me, I think it's a home run, because if he never gets hurt, he's the number 1 safety on the board, in my opinion.
100%.
So if there's a way you can get him in the second round, that is an absolute steal. And listen, don't get me wrong. I also like Malachi more. I like Billy Bowman from Oklahoma.
I love Billy Bowman.
I also like Jalen Reed from Penn State, who filled in in that basically leadership role in the back end of the secondary after Winston got hurt. And he played well. And yes, he's a little bit limited in terms of what he can do, but I really like him as a prospect. You can get him late in the draft, but
I agree.
I absolutely love Kevin Winston. To me, he is. I guess Malachi Starks would be my 1A, and I think Kevin Winston would be my 1B.
That's fair. I think that's fair. And he's young too. I think he's only 21.
Yeah, he is a young player.
And he, you can't really look at 24 as a like grading out, right? Because the ACL injury. But
Yeah,
in 23, I mean, he was an absolute stud. The other thing I think I'm interested to see what they look at here is how many reps these guys are taking deep versus the slot versus the box, right?
Yeah.
A majority of what you're looking at with like a Nick Emanwari because of his size, a majority of his snaps came in the box.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if that's necessarily what Fangio is looking for. I think he's looking for someone that can play.
Does he give you Taylor Mays vibes?
Yeah, 100%. A perfect comp. I think they're looking for someone who can play that that quarters defense, right? And still come down and fill and fit in the run. I think Kevin Winston is going to give you prototypical size. He's big too. He's 6'2", 208. And he played a majority of his snaps deep. I think he'd be a perfect fit for Fangio. I 100% agree. But the guy I'm head over heels for here is Makuba. Not only because of his ball skills, but I just think the value there in the second or third round would be great. He is a smaller guy. He's only about 190 pounds, 5'11". But
by the way, when I posted my mock, there was a couple comments that said 5'11", 185. No, thank you. Too small. So
yeah,
well,
then he shouldn't be drafted at all. Obviously, we're a bunch of dipshits out there talking about Makuba being a top, top 2 rounds. Anyway, they had a formal meeting with him.
Played for the Colts. That was smaller.
CJGJ wasn't as big as he is now. When he came into the league, he put in the work and he got up to that 200-pound mark. I think he was a $190 soaking wet when he came in. You don't think he can put on 10, 15 pounds? Anyway, he doesn't play that small. He doesn't play at $185. You see that hit he put on Georgia in the playoffs? Yeah. I mean, damn near crumpled the dude. He's young. He's 22, right at 4'4". He plays deep in the slot, right? 898 reps deep, 629 in the slot. Great coverage grades from PFF. Great against the run. He has a 23.3% forced incompletion rate. So almost a quarter of the throws that go his way are forced incompletion. Either he knocks it down, rips it out of their hands, or picks it off. When I look at him, I see Devin McCourty. He's a guy that I see with him of similar size, similar athleticism, and had like a 15-year career. So Makuba's my guy because I think he gives you that versatility in the slot or deep. And I think he's better against the run than a lot of folks are giving him credit for.
Yeah, I think people put too much into like numbers in terms of size and what they see and stuff like that, and just I don't know. People are going to complain because they're going to look at a 40 and it's not as fast because he weighs less and he should run faster. And
I mean, don't get me wrong, like those metrics are important, and we obviously care about it specifically in Philadelphia. I think
sure.
I think Howie puts a lot of emphasis on that, but I think they use it to confirm rather than deny, right? Like, I think they use it to say, okay, this matches what I'm seeing on tape, rather than looking at a guy like Emanwari, who tested a perfect 10 from a relative athletic score. But he doesn't play like that, right? He's built like a pit bull. He plays like a Shih Tzu. So anyway, sorry, real quick. Lakuba had 5 picks this year.
He was active.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you want a ball hawk. He's my guy. He's my number one fit, I think, for the Fangio defense outside of like a Winston or Malachi Starks.
So one thing I want to bring up too, when talking about the size aspect and what they should run, and all the line, lining up like that. So let me see what we have here. So if you look at the best 40-yard dash times, the top 10 fastest in NFL history. Okay, so Xavier Worthy, I think it's too small to tell what he's done. He's only played 1 year. He's had a really good
player, though. Yeah,
that's good player. John Ross, disappointment.
Yeah,
which he does get a Super Bowl ring, just so you know.
Which great for him, by the way.
Yes,
that's a cool story. Well, all right, keep going. I see where you're going with this. Keep going.
Kalen Barnes, 2022.
Gross.
Chris Johnson, East Carolina, he had a really good career. I will give him that.
Yeah.
Jerome Mathis, wide receiver, Hampton in 2005. Yeah. He was a kick returner, and that's about it. Dree Archer from Kent State.
Yeah.
Would tell you this, loved playing with him in those college games for Kent State because he was small and he was super fast. But didn't have much of a NFL career. Tariq Woolen, I think he's had a very solid career so far, especially being a 5th-round pick. So I'll give him that. DJ Turner, I think he's had an okay career so far. He's only been in the league a couple of years.
Where was he drafted? Was he in the 5th?
2nd round.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Henry Ruggs, well, yeah. Speed isn't the only thing on the football field. So, we know how that is. And I'd say that's a disappointment. And then number 10, Marquise Goodwin. He was a below average player, 3rd-round pick. Only 120 games played, 3,000 receiving yards.
Eagles legend.
Eagles legend.
Eagles legend.
But, and you have your unofficial 40-yard dash times of certain, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, Darrell Green. But of course, I'm going. Right. So speed doesn't always mean you're going to be. And the other thing too is so many players, they get themselves so ready for this testing that they test off the charts, but that's not how they play on the field. That's not the speed they play on the field in helmets and pads and everything. You're running in literally a skin tight sweatsuit, essentially.
I mean, look at Taylor Mays. And we brought him up earlier. 6'3", 230, ran a 4.43. And had a RAS score of 9.86. So he wound up going in the 2nd round. It was a complete disappointment. I think the Emanwari Taylor Mays comp is perfect. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are pounding the table for Emanwari. I don't. He's not Cam Chancellor. He's not. He's Taylor Mays. I'll eat crow if he comes here and balls out. If he goes anywhere and balls out, I'll eat crow. But I just don't. I don't see it on tape to say he's going to be a stud.
Yeah, people want to, they bring in the Cam Chancellors and Derwin James and all these like great players, but there were some really.
He plays less like Cam Chancellor and more like Nate Allen.
Yeah, well, Nate Allen.
Or Earl Wolf.
Jaquan
Jarrett.
We've now turned to talking about the not so great Eagles draft history.
Let me ask you about a player who's really interesting to me because I don't know where he's going to slot in, And I think I don't want to say he's underrated. He may be underrated with the Eagles fan base. I think he's getting some buzz in the draft circle. Xavier Watts from Notre Dame is a really interesting player. He is not a little guy. I mean, he's 5'11", 6 foot, somewhere around there, 204 pounds. He ran with a decent speed. He ran a 4.5, but he has elite production every year that he was at Notre Dame. Last year, he had 82 tackles, 4 for a loss, 6 picks for 136 yards and a touchdown, 10 passes defensed, a fumble recovery, forced fumble, 0 TDs allowed in 2024. And hold on, in 2023, he had 7 more picks. So that's 13 picks in 2 years and won the Nagurski Award in 2023.
I'll just say this. I would not be disappointed if he was drafted by them, just because you can't teach ball skills. Like, you can't say, oh, well, you have to be like, you either have them or you don't. And that's the one thing that CJ Gardner-Johnson had. Yeah, he may have struggled in certain situations with tackling and certain situations with, covering in the red zone and certain things like that. I get that. But when he can get you multiple interceptions, like a good number of interceptions.
In 2 years? 12 picks in 2 years. That's not production. I think people are underestimating that production because of his shortcomings in coverage.
Yeah. Listen, if they get like a Watts and he has 3 or 4 picks his rookie year with them, I'll be okay. This is like Gardner Johnson. I get that, whatever. But you get this guy that potentially can give you that type of interception turnover production. I'm totally fine with that.
I think he's a sleeper. I think he's one of those guys that is a little underappreciated by our fan base. He's got decent versatility too. I mean, he's played 882 snaps deep, 628 in the box, and 463 in the slot. I mean, he's been asked to cover receivers, tight ends, running backs. He grades out super well in coverage and against the run. He has a 16% forced incompletion percentage. I mean, I think he's a little overlooked overlooked by our fan base. And I think he's a guy that I would be keeping an eye on as a sleeper pick, maybe in the second round.
Listen, I would be totally fine with that. Now, I do want to bring up what Adam Schefter had said, which is kind of funny because it's like he said that Philly, like 1 to 2 trades, they trade every year. They have a handful of trades every single year because it's just what they do. Now, if he would have said, I think they're going to trade for, a big name player with potentially, a couple of those picks by the next, 1 to 2 years and stuff. Okay, that's a little bit different. But when you talk about, they're going to make 1 to 2 trades. Well, no shit, Sherlock. They're going to make 1 to 2 trades. They do that every year. So, I thought that was pretty funny when he said that.
I mean, of course, people are going to run with that, and that was under like a bold take section of the show too, which I think is pretty funny because, I mean, everybody in the league knows they're going to make like 5 trades on draft day. It is interesting that he did say, I don't know what they're going to be for or who they're going to be for. I think some of that might be, if I'm just reading the tea leaves here, I think some of that might be alluding to specifically Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to move Huff on draft day, the draft weekend too.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just say Josh Huff? Or did I just say Huff?
You said Bryce Huff, I think. I think you did. We've said Josh.
I hope I didn't say Josh Huff. But yeah, I think that's, if I had to really put on my tinfoil hat, I think that's really what he's talking about. I think he's more referring to a Goddard and or Huff trade.
We kind of have outlined that has been for most likely going to happen.
Well, before we head out here, I don't think you gave me a corner that you're interested in.
I gave you Siobhan Ravel Jr.
Oh, you gave me Siobhan Ravel. Okay. Can I throw out one guy that I think is a fun player to watch
Go ahead.
at corner? Mac McWilliams. I know we've talked about him quite a few times.
Yeah.
He's a smaller guy, 5'10", 191. He's 23, but tested well, good speed. Played at UAB for a couple years and then finished off strong at UCF. The reason I bring him up is because when I'm looking at these prospects, I'm looking at a lot of guys that have inside-outside versatility. I'm looking at guys that have pretty good athleticism, except for Kobe Bryant. And I'm looking for guys who are specifically good in zone. My understanding, and again, I'm not a scout, but my understanding is that it's a little bit harder to teach zone, an understanding of zone and a feel for zone than it is a man press or mirror match. Right. And so that's one thing that I went through this exercise with in mind. And he was awesome. If you guys out there listening get a chance, put on his tape from the Senior Bowl and watch him match up against those guys. He was sticky as hell in coverage. His footwork was super impressive. Graded out really well in coverage, specifically in zone. He had his passer rating allowed in 2022 was a 46.5. I mean, granted that was at UAB, but I mean, no slouch this year at 69.3. I think he'd be a fun inside-outside versatile defender for Fangio. I really like him. He's one of those guys I try to fit in my mock drafts if I can.
Yeah. And listen, if he's available for you in the 5th, or if you wind up acquiring a 6th-round pick and he's available there, come on. Again, those later rounds you do sometimes throw darts.
Yeah.
And sometimes they work. Jordan Mailata. So you just never know when you're making these picks because, these players, if you take a look at rosters, Super Bowl rosters, most of the team is made up of late round picks, undrafted guys.
Yeah.
It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a different story now too when looking at prospects because of the coaches and development that we've had in place over the last couple of years. I trust Parker and Fangio with developing these players more than I did past regimes. That's one thing that I'm going into this a little bit more open-minded about. Projection rather than who they are now, which I think is refreshing as hell, obviously to have in Philadelphia. But keep that in mind when you guys are scouting prospects and look for that projection rather than who they are immediately. Because a guy like Mac McWilliams, I think, flies under the radar otherwise.
Alrighty, so. Before we end it, of course, as you see, the last thing on there is Eagles trivia. Now, what I'm going to do here
I hate you.
Is let me see here. So it's going to be 14 questions. They're quick. They're multiple choice.
14 questions?
14 questions.
Holy shit. All right.
So the first one is, when were the Eagles founded? What year were the Eagles founded?
1933.
Okay.
Are we going with Eagles or are we going with Frankfurt?
Eagles. You were right.
33.
What quarterback led the Eagles to their first Super Bowl appearance?
Jaworski.
That is correct.
That is correct.
What year did the Eagles begin playing at Lincoln Financial Field?
2023. 2003.
Yes,
sorry.
2003. And what year did the Eagles play in their first Super Bowl?
1980.
That is correct.
Against the Raiders.
That wasn't part of the answer. Question. Who scored the Eagles' only rushing touchdown in Super Bowl 52?
Blunt.
That is correct. Wait.
Yeah.
Yes, you are right. It was Blunt.
There was only one rushing touchdown in the entire game, I think.
Yeah, because Corey Clement scored a receiving touchdown.
Yep.
What was the Eagles' home stadium prior to Lincoln Financial Field?
Veterans Stadium. That's where I was baptized.
What is the name of the 100 buyers of the Eagles in 1949? Now, here's multiple choice. Billionaire Birds, Philly Specials, Eagles Flock, Happy 100.
Say that again.
Billionaire Birds, Philly Specials, Eagles Flock, Happy 100. Name of the 100 buyers in 1949.
I'm going to go with Happy 100.
That is correct. Who was the first Eagles player to have their number retired? Pete Retzlaff, Al Wistert, Steve Van Buren, Chuck Bednarik.
I'm going to go with Van Buren.
That is correct. How many NFL championships did the Eagles win in the pre-Super Bowl era? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
3. 48, 49, and 60.
That is correct. What NFL Hall of Famer wore number 81 for the Eagles? Ditka, Chris Carter, James Lofton, Terrell Owens.
I mean, T.O. did.
That's the correct answer.
Yeah. No one else did out of that?
Nope.
Group? Lofton was what, 88? 85?
85, I think.
Yeah.
83, maybe. Who is the only Eagle to win Defensive Player of the Year?
Oh, I'm going to assume it's Reggie White.
And you would assume correct. Who led the 2010 Philadelphia Eagles in receiving yards? Macklin, Avant, Deshaun, or Brent Selleck?
Macklin.
Deshaun Jackson.
Damn.
Rank these Eagles in franchise rushing yards from the most to the fewest.
Ooh.
Randall, Westbrook, Van Buren, McCoy.
Which McCoy? Shady?
LaShawn, yeah.
Say the numbers again, or the folks again. It was Randall, McCoy,
Randall, B. West, Van Buren, McCoy.
McCoy is number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, I'd say, is Van Buren. Number 3, Westbrook. Number 4, Cunningham.
So you got McCoy right. Got Van Buren right.
So it was Cunningham and B. West?
You got them all right. Yeah, you were right. I was just trying to make you think you were wrong. Rank these Eagles in franchise receptions from most to the fewest.
All right.
Brian Westbrook, Deshaun, Selleck, and Ertz.
Westbrook, Deshaun, Selleck, and Ertz. I would go Ertz number 1. And it was Selleck, Westbrook, and Deshaun.
Yeah.
Ertz, I'd go number 1. I'm going to go Westbrook,
Okay.
Djax, Selleck.
So it was, let me go to it for you. So it is
Ertz is 1.
Ertz is 1.
Then maybe Selleck.
Didn't give me the answer. Just gives me a if wrong and doesn't give me the answer.
All right.
I'll look it up quick and then we'll end it. I actually think so. It's Ertz number 1.
Yeah.
Then it's Deshaun, then Brian Westbrook, then Selleck.
What did I say?
You mixed. You put B West second. So Ertz would have been number 1.
Writing it down.
579. No, you know what? Actually, you were right because B West 426 would have been second. Brent Selleck 398, and then Deshaun 379. I keep forgetting Deshaun when he came back only played like 5 games in 2 years.
He also he wasn't a volume guy.
No, he was a deep threat.
3 catches for 128 yards or something.
Yeah. It's a fun thing if you think about it, because when you look at the Eagles' receptions leaders in their career, so guys who were active still.
Yeah.
So Dallas Goedert is 10th, which, of course, he may be traded, so he may not be on the team anymore.
I'm going to be so pissed when he's gone.
Yeah, I know. I will too. Devontae's 14th with 308. He's tied with Fred Barnett actually for 13th.
That's pretty sweet. I love Fred.
So essentially, if you think, say he gets 70 receptions next year as a low point. So 70 would bring him to 378. That would put him at 7th, one behind Deshaun. So that's a pretty big time leap in just 1 year.
I think when all's said and done, he's going to go down as the most storied receiver in franchise history. I think over Brown. I think he's going to last longer than Brown.
He may, yeah. And listen, you never know. Now AJ Brown's 22nd. He's tied for 21st actually, with 261 receptions in his career. So again, say he gets 70 catches. That brings him up to 331. That brings him all the way to 12th all time. So, if him and Devontae play another, say, 3 years together, they could be up there in the top 5.
10. Yeah.
So, because Harold, of course, is number 1 at 589. Zach Ertz is 579. Pete Retzlaff is 452. And then, of course, as I mentioned, B. West, Selleck, and Deshaun round out the top 6. So
interesting. All right, so I got 2 wrong.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right,
things happen.
Hey, I'm proud of myself. That's an A.
Don't worry, we'll have more for you as the weeks go on.
Appreciate it.
Keeps your mind going a little bit.
You might have to send me some when I'm on paternity leave. Send me some random Eagles questions.
Well, I could do that. That wouldn't be super hard. But as we always do, we always end it with 2 very special words and fun words. Go
Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.